This is Fantasy Football Live. I'm Eric Casillas. That's Sean King. And coming up, they had the most rushing touchdowns last year. They've had the most in the NFL over the last 5 years. And if you give most people 10 guesses, they never name this team. We'll name it for you.
He has the best nickname, the best game, and I'm going to tell you why you better have him on your fantasy team.
I'm Kay Adams. I'm going to tell you why C.J. Spiller needs to be in your top 5 overall this year. 6 yards per carry, and he's going to be the star in that offense.
I'm Brandon Funston, Yahoo Sports, and I'm going to tell you why there's going to be nothing slim about Shady McCoy's fantasy numbers in Philly this season.
Brad Evans here from Yahoo Sports, and sound the trumpets. I'll tell you what Colts running back you should saddle up in the middle rounds and grab those cheat sheets. Fantasy Football Live starts now.
Yeah, Tuesday. Welcome to Fantasy Football Live. And over the next 30 minutes, you're going to get the best fantasy information and news anywhere. Courtesy of RotoWorld, the top fantasy news site, and Yahoo, the top fantasy game site. And let's get you going with the big board that has all the latest trends. You see right here, latest trends, and they include Rob Gronkowski. What's going to happen there? Difference of opinion on where to rank him. Speaking of Patriots tight ends, Aaron Hernandez certainly been in the news lately. What do you do with Reggie Bush? There's a lot of catches and a lot of touchdowns last year. If you combine the Lions running backs, he seems to have the job there. Now, let's go back to you, Sean, and let's go back to Aaron Hernandez right there. The legal issues, we still don't know. It's like the Polaroid that comes out. It takes 60 seconds to develop. We're going to have to make a judgment before we know the full 60 seconds has elapsed. What are you thinking with Aaron Hernandez?
I'm thinking that hopefully this will clear itself up before it's time to have this draft, because with Gronkowski's injury history coming off of recent back surgery, if Aaron Hernandez is available for the New England Patriots, he's an early round draft pick. Tom Brady has shown that he likes to throw to the tight end. Aaron Hernandez could be one of those tight ends.
He has 8 targets a game when he plays. The question is he going to play? Because not only may he have to deal with Johnny Law, but he's got to deal with Johnny Commissioner. And you know, the commissioner has suspended people who have not been arrested and who have not been convicted of anything. He will have some price to pay. Now, that's one half of the Patriots tight end duo. For the other half, Rob Gronkowski and his injury status. Let's turn it over to Kay Adams.
All right, let's talk about Rob Gronkowski. Brandon Funston and Brad Evans alongside. What do you do? 1 surgery, 2 surgeries, 5 surgeries. Are they going to rush him back given the Hernandez situation?
Well, listen, Kay, he's never really been the picture of health, and last year he missed 5 games. He still was the number 2 fantasy tight end. I think that's my over-under. Maybe he misses 4 or 5 games, but if he plays 11, 12 games, I still have him at number 2 overall on my tight end list.
No way you're taking that risk on at number 2 overall among tight ends. I mean, that is a serious dice roll. This guy has had a history of back injuries. Going back to his days at Arizona, I think he's a strong pup candidate. Could miss the first six games of the regular season. I understand he's a picture of studness when he's healthy, but there's just too much to risk here for taking him inside the top 5. There's no way I'm touching with a 10,000-foot pole.
I'm not taking a guy that you can't expect to be there in weeks 1 or 2. Eric, back to you.
All right, let's take a look at the overall top 5. And, Sean, ours will go first. And as you see here, pretty much everybody is Adrian Peterson, and you have Arian Foster in some kind of fashion as 2 of your top 3. But then it gets interesting. So let's talk about a couple of those names. And let's start with Doug Martin. You love him, I hate him. Tell me why you love Doug Martin.
Here's why I hate him, because this phrase is going to become synonymous with almost every back in the top 15. Timeshare. Doug Martin is not in a timeshare. He's the only running back in Tampa that anyone can even name. He's the running back in their regular offense, in their goal line package, in their 2-minute package. He does everything for them at running back, and he's coming off of a season where he was extremely productive. And I know the second half of the season, his production slowed, but he lost Davin Joseph and Carl Nicks, 2 all-pro guards from that offensive line. Those guys are healthy. Look for Doug Martin to improve on his rushing statistics, and don't forget, he got 71 targets in the passing game from Josh Freeman.
Yeah, but he only caught 1 touchdown the entire year in the pass game. And in the second half of the year, you can tell me about the injuries to the guards, but the bottom line is he was brutal. He had more games under 70 yards rushing than over 70 yards rushing. He had a whopping total of 4 touchdowns in the second half of the year. That's not enough production for me. I like a guy like Alfred Morris. Alfred Morris had the most 100-yard rushing games with the exception of AP, and he was the only running back other than AP to average more than 100 yards. And if you don't just like yards, how about touchdowns? He had 7 in the last 4 weeks alone. And every single play the Washington Redskins ran last year, save for 1, went to Alfred Morris at the goal line. I like the guy that's going to get the ball, have the totes, and score that.
I really like Alfred Morris. He's in my top 5, too. The only thing that scares me with Alfred Morris is he has a coach that's a reality TV character. Well, what if he brings Mike Shanahan cold coffee in week 6? Mike Shanahan has shown that he does not stick to one running back. That's the only thing that scares me about Alfred Morris, is that he could end up in that doghouse and one of those other backs could become their feature guy.
In Denver, it may be different guys in different years. You get 2-3-year runs, but once you get that run, whether it be Mike Anderson or any of those other guys, and I think Alfred Morris is in his prime. What do we have over there, Kay? Let's look at your top 5 and the rest of the crew.
Let's take a look at the top 5 overall for Roto World. Brad Evans and Brandon Funston. Let's see. We've got Adrian Peterson, Arian Foster. That looks the same, but I got to ask you, Brad, with Arian Foster at number 2, aren't you worried about the setbacks? He was hurt the first day of OTAs. He has close to 1,000 carries in the past 3 seasons. Scale of 1 to 10, where's your worry meter on Foster this year?
Well, with 10 being the lowest amount of worry, it's a 10. It might actually be an 11. I'm not at all fretting about Arian Foster. You know, this guy is still fantasy for stud. And the reason being, you look at his numbers last year, I know the yards per carry dropped off, but as a numerical fallacy, if you look at the underlying stats, a guy had 29 totes inside the 5-yard line. Naturally, your yards per carry is going to decline because you're running over a shorter distance. He's still a fixture at the goal line. He's still got a very good offensive line in front of him, although Derek Newton needs to elevate his game. Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins to the mix there to stretch the field. And he's got, some competition there with Ben Tate. But I think Ben Tate's a good thing because if Ben Tate can get him around 150 to 170 total touches, that's going to keep Foster upright in the lineup on a week-in, week-out basis. He is still going to be a consistency king. That is why I have him ranked right behind the purple Jesus on my big board.
Brandon Funston, let's look at yours. 3rd overall, going rogue a bit, LaShawn McCoy. Now, this is the guy who was drafted top 5 last year, ended up outside the top 20 at his position. Why are you so high on Shady this season?
Well, the reason he was drafted so high last year is because he had 20 touchdowns in 15 games the year before. So we know his upside. He has the upside to be up there with anybody when it comes to the running backs in fantasy. But the reason I'm so bullish, and I may not be the most bullish fantasy expert in the industry when it's all said and done, is Chip Kelly comes in, a guy who averaged nearly 40 carries per game at the University of Oregon. Turned out guys like LaMichael James, Jonathan Stewart, Kenjon Barner. LaShawn McCoy is going to be a part of this breakneck, high-octane offense. They're going to go no huddle. They're going to call plays from the sidelines. It's going to be a ton of offensive plays from scrimmage in each game. And I want LaShawn McCoy. It's going to be must-see TV, and I want to be a part of that with LaShawn McCoy.
There you have it. Chip Kelly's offense. Also, Bryce Brown might be a guy to look at there as well. Eric?
I dig the fact that he's going to go out on a limb with LaShawn McCoy first year and Chip Kelly I trust. With Tom Brady, you don't have to go out on a limb. He's been a top 3 fantasy quarterback each of the last 3 seasons. I mean, it's not news to say he's really good. What is unusual, 4 rushing touchdowns last year, 3 the year before. He only had 7 the 9 years before that. So he may short you a couple of rushing touchdowns this year. But if that's the biggest knock we have on Tom Brady, there's not much to say. How much do you love Tom Brady?
I don't love Tom Brady, but as you say, I think he's a rock-solid pick. No worries if you draft Tom Brady. But I think when you evaluate where you're going to have to take Tom Brady, there are quarterbacks with higher upside. When you look at this New England passing game, ever since Randy Moss left the Patriots, it has not been a vertical, down-the-field, aggressive passing game. It became more of a dink and dunk, throw screens, find Wes Welker underneath, move the chains type of offense. And I think that's what they are this year, unless rookie receiver Aaron Dobson can be the productive like Randy Moss was. But I think that's a work in progress. I don't like the upside on Tom Brady.
Well, the top 6 receivers from last year are all either facing jail time, facing surgery, they're in San Diego, they're in Denver, or in the case of Brandon Lloyd and his 131 targets, they're out on the street. So there's a lot of upheaval. But Brady, as you said, the rock, the solid pick. We have some young guys that may have more upside, but they're also riskier picks. Let's take a look at the young guns and see how they come in when you look at the rankings right there. You can check out the Roto World on the left. You can take Yahoo on the right. Now, Kay, why don't you start and take the CNC boys, Colin Kaepernick and Cam Newton?
I think it's Cam Newton above everybody else. He's top 5. Everybody else falls outside of the top 10 for me. The difference between Cam Newton and Colin Kaepernick, I'll bring in Brad Evans and I'll bring in Brandon Funston here. I say Colin Kaepernick, you got to slot him down with no Michael Crabtree. He's out at least 12 weeks with an Achilles injury. Brad?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I have him number 6 on my quarterback big board. Actually, 1 spot ahead of Tom Brady, given the uncertainties there in Foxborough. But I love me some Cam Newton. I mean, this guy is money in the bank, unstoppable inside the 10-yard line with that quarterback draw play. Consecutive seasons of 700-plus rushing yards, 22 total rushing touchdowns during that stretch. And I think he's going to become a more polished passer. I know there's been some changeover at the offensive coordinator position, but Mike Shula was his coach at the quarterback's position last year. So I don't really think you're going to see a whole lot of change or transition in terms of how play calling is going to be conducted there in Charlotte. So, yeah, I love Cam Newton. I have him number 2 right now on my quarterback big board.
Brandon?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were teeing me up. Okay. I'll tell you what. I have both these guys in my top 8 at the fantasy quarterback spot, but I see both of them arrowing down based upon off-season stuff that we're hearing. Mike Shula talking about de-emphasizing the read option for Cam Newton. Look, the guy has 22 rushing touchdowns in the last 2 years. They're talking about how he has nearly 100 quarterback rating under center and that they may do a little bit less with that read option. If they do, that's not good for Cam Newton's fantasy value. I don't love the supporting cast when it comes to the passing game there in Carolina. Same goes for Colin Kaepernick. You mentioned the Crabtree loss. They also lose Delaney Walker and have to move Vernon Davis maybe out to play wide receiver. So a lot of moving parts there. A lot of people coming in, a lot of people going out, and I don't see that as good for Kaepernick as well. That's why these are 2 guys that I might bump down a spot or 2 more as the summer progresses.
For me, no reason to slot down Cam Newton. I'm on Superman's team all season long. Back to you guys.
All right, those are the third-year guys. You and I are going to get the super sophomores, and there were 3 of them last year. There's Russell Wilson, there's RG3, and there's Andrew Luck. I have it Luck, Wilson, RG3. RG3 concerns me with the injury situation, plus 7 rushing touchdowns last year. I don't think they're going to run him as much this year, especially coming off the injury. And remember, he also had a concussion during the year as well. So I think those numbers come back to earth a little bit. Russell Wilson concerns me. I think he's a little overrated right now. Look, he has never, ever, and his entire career in the regular season thrown for 300 yards. He has more games under 200 yards than over 200 yards. So I like Luck the best. Luck has been a monster. He's only going to get better. You and I talked to a coach in that division off the record who said, I had no way to game plan for him. Every time I watched him on film, I said, how are we going to possibly stop this guy? I want no part of him for the next 10 years. I go Luck. I go RG3 last. I go Russell Wilson in the middle. Tell me why I'm right or wrong.
You're right about Andrew Luck. He's going to put up tremendous numbers this year because Indianapolis is going to be bad. No way they approach the 10 wins they had last year. They'll be behind in every game. He'll be chucking the ball around. He's going to put up big statistics. Russell Wilson, however, will have the best statistics of those 3, and that's because Seattle found out what it's like last year to be on the road in the playoffs. They feel like they have a Super Bowl team. They added Percy Harvin, which is the one thing offensively they did not have, was a dynamic yards after the catch receiver. Now you put Sidney Rice and Golden Tate, who proved that they can get behind those safeties last year and make big plays. Russell Wilson does 2 things that you love. He's accurate, and he does not turn the football over. Added to the fact that he can run with his feet and will, I think, score you 5 or 6 rushing touchdowns. To me, he'll end up a better fantasy quarterback than Andrew Luck.
I love what he did down the stretch, 17 touchdowns, 2 picks. But remember, in 14 of the 16 games, he did not rush for a touchdown. I have Luck a shade ahead, but I think we agree for most of what we said there. All right, good start. Now, straight ahead, there's one guy in one city that could be the difference between you winning or losing your league. We'll have that list coming at you next. This is Fantasy Football Live. Thank you. Well,
Yeah.